Welcome everyone to another episode of Dress and Drinks. Our speaker today is Tracy Panek, the historian and director of archives at Levi Strauss and Company. A lifelong Levi's enthusiast, she has combined her academic training in history at with a BA at the University of California, Berkeley, and her MA at Sacramento State University. With decades of experience in corporate archives, and joined Levi Strauss in 2014. In that, she has led efforts to preserve and interpret the brand's rich legacy, tracing its roots back to the California Gold Rush and forward into global fashion. Through a selection of highlights from The Vault, Panek will explore how Levi's garments reveal the lives of their wearers, how people have expressed work, identity, and politics through what they wear, and workwear to streetwear to the runway. Levi's remains a strong, powerful symbol of adaptability and cultural relevance. And with that, please thank and welcome Tracy to the program. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you, the audience at the Costume Society of America. I'm super excited to be able to join you and tell you a little bit about what our collection is like at the archives. But maybe before I jump into the garments, Leon, could I tell the audience a bit about the company's history? All right. Well, let's do that. Let me start by telling you Levi Strauss and Company is one of the oldest American apparel brands, still out there, still going strong. And in 2028, we will turn 175 years old. I think it's for an American company, it's pretty unusual. But we're excited. We date back to 1853, the height of the California Gold Rush. And on the next slide, you will see how we date our beginnings. We date it to the time when our founder and namesake, Levi Strauss, or if you're in Europe, you probably will be calling him Levi Strauss, when he arrived in San Francisco for the Gold Rush. He was, just a little bit of background about Levi, he was the youngest son in a Jewish family in Germany, Bavaria. There were very few opportunities, as you can imagine, in the middle of the 1800s for him to do much of anything. So he decides to immigrate with his mother and sisters to the United States. His father, who was a traveling peddler, had passed away, and he goes first to New York, like most of the immigrants do, and he lives for a time in Lower Manhattan, where he's got two older brothers who have who've set up a dry goods wholesale business. Mm-hmm. And he learns about the business from his brothers until he hears the siren call of the gold rush. And he decides that he's going to expand the family's business to the West Coast. And so he's going to head out to San Francisco. It's, by the way, it's a month-long journey. You have to take a steamship down to Panama. This is before the canal. Take a railroad and other means of transportation to get to the Pacific side, then take another steamship up to San Francisco. But he arrives and sets up business not far from the waterfront, where we still are today. And we can go to the next slide, Leon. And I love that you have such an expressive face so I can see what's going on. So here's a picture of the headquarters for Levi in about the 1880s. And you can see probably one of the reasons he arrives in San Francisco is he can have the business under his own name. There he is, Levi Strauss and Company. This is Battery Street. If you've been in San Francisco, this is the financial district. So Battery and Pine, which is not far from Market Street. And we are still located on Battery Street today, but we're located closer to the north part of the city. We're adjacent to the cruise ship terminal. So if you want to come visit, come by cruise ship, walk across the street, and you can come and visit our museum. But Levi was incredibly successful. He wasn't in California to mine for gold, but he was there to sell things to the miners and to other retail customers all around the American West. And he did so successfully very early on. So much so that in this picture, you can see the large crew of salesmen that he had, who traveled as far north as Oregon and Washington and as far south as Arizona. and New Mexico. And
I have
yeah,
a question.
excellent. Did they take things with them on the trips? Do you mean the salesman? Yes, they had wagons and they hitched up great big trunks and filled them with samples. And by the time Levi was manufacturing his own things, that's what he would do. But in those early days, they did the same thing. So wagon, horse and buggy wagon, that's how they'd send things around. So Levi's very successful. He's got salesmen all around the western states. We're on the Pacific, so we even have customers as far away as Japan and Australia. Yeah, back in the day, selling our fine dry goods. But it is a customer closer to home in Nevada, in fact, who will introduce a small but tiny innovation that will allow Levi to make his own products for the first time and eventually revolutionize fashion. Let's take a look at what that innovation is on the next slide, Leon.
Fantastic.
There it is, a tiny piece of metal. Yeah, that's great. A tiny piece of metal, a rivet added to the pockets of a pair of pants where there's stress because you're putting your hands in and out. This innovation was something that a tailor, one of Levi's customers, came up with in Reno. And the tailor, in a letter in 1872, how did he develop this? Okay.
Yeah, so curious.
He came up with the idea because he was working on a horse blanket that attached to a saddle. And he had some rivets from the horse blanket sitting on his workspace. And he'd been asked to create a really strong pair of pants, and he thought, let me just add some of these rivets. So it was just creative thinking, and he was a tinkerer, this Jacob Davis, the tailor from Reno, Nevada. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So very good. So this letter in 1872, this tailor writes to Levi in San Francisco. He orders some supplies. He's got to get some more fabric for his tailor shop. And he also tells the company about this unusual innovation because he's been making these riveted denim pants and they are selling like hotcakes. And his neighbors are getting jealous. At least that's how he describes it in a letter. And he invites the company to take out a patent for this unusual riveting process. And Levi is an adventurer. He agrees. And in 1873, as you'll see on the next slide, the patent is granted. It's called an improvement in fastening pocket openings, U.S. patent number 139121. It was granted on May 20th, 1873. We refer to it as the birthday of the blue jean or 501 day. We like to celebrate around the office, of course, because, that's an important milestone for us.
Okay, so I have another question that I just posted in the chat.
Is this the precursor to the buttons for button fly jeans? So button fly jeans were around at the time. The zipper hadn't been invented in 1873. So when Jacob Davis, the tailor, comes to add these rivets, he's doing it on a pair of button fly pants. Yes, good question. I hope I answered that right. Okay, so next picture, you can see who those early customers were. These were blue collar working men. They were outdoors. They were doing mining, farmers, railroad engineers, anybody who needed tough pants, cowboys and the like. And we're fortunate in the archives that was established in 1989. So we're pretty old now to still have some of those garments in our archives, which is what we're going to talk about today. So check out the next slide where you can get a glimpse of one of those early pieces from the 1870s. And I'll take a pause to see if you, Leon, have a question. Oh, wow. Is that what? Okay. Wow. Yes. Wow. With the big W. These are, you might notice some differences. We'll talk about them in a minute. But the blue jeans that you wear today, and I know some of you have them in your closet. I hope all of you do. But the ones that you see here aren't really that much different to the ones that we had originally. Although these ones, just take a look. You might see a few little differences. Leon, I hope you see a few differences. Yeah. What do you see?
Yeah. Tell me about the cut in the back. It looks like there's a yoke And then, of course, the belt over the top.
You're looking at the top. You're talking about the below the buckle there, what that little insert is? Okay, so that little piece of fabric, I think, was a way to help size it. If you just had it straight across, it would have been a little bit different. Yeah, that was there. Now today we don't have that little addition.
Yeah.
Tell me about the cut in the back. Yes, so that cut was simply a way to transition between the waistband and the bottom of the pant, and the sewing machine operator could make adjustments as needed. Let's take a look in the next slide at the very oldest pair of blue jeans or Levi's that we have in the archives. And I'm going to give you a minute just to absorb what you're looking at, and I'm going to talk about them. You may be surprised at the color, for one thing. Maybe they're not as blue as you thought. And I'll tell you right off the bat, that's because these pants were worn outdoors, and the natural indigo, a lot of it has simply leached out and it's not there anymore. You can see little pieces of it.
What are the white sections?
What are the white sections in the crotch? Yes. Okay. So let me tell you about those. And the pair that you see, you know, these are over 150 years old, right? They've been outdoors. They've had a lot of hardware and work. As you can see, they almost have a camouflage color because of all the dirt and rust and so forth that's on them. There were little bits of the denim coming off, and in order to stabilize the garment, we had one of our fabulous designers, Paul Dillinger, Marina, create an undergarment, like a ghost blue jean, and he attached with tiny little stitches. He attached the denim to it so that we could show it more easily and not worry about losing more of the garment. Does that make sense?
Yes, to stabilize it.
Okay. And Paul Dillinger is our head of innovation, and he did an amazing job. He used organza, but he tested it, made sure that there weren't any issues with the acidity or alkalinity of the material, and then came and spent a couple of weeks with us, just like Meg did several years ago, with some magnified, lit up glasses, looking down, trying to do the needlework. And I will tell you, the one thing that he shared with us, that this 150-year-old plus pair of jeans, the denim is still incredibly strong. He had a hard time pushing that needle through, is what he told me.
Wow.
So we learned a lot about it just going through those steps. Let's take a look at the next slide, and we can look at some detail shots of the pant. Oh, I love that, Leon. Yes, it is exciting to see those detail shots. On the top left, you will see the back center with the yoke, the riser, Marina, on the back side. The cinch you will see just above it. That's the back buckle. Remember, this is not your skinny jean. This is a loose, full cut, as they described it. If you wanted to adjust it, you could tighten your buckle, that back cinch. In fact, it was created in many ways for more than one person who was a different size to wear and just adjust with the cinch at the back. Just underneath that cinch, you'll see a little bit of blue. That was the location of the original patch, but it was a leather patch, and trying to tighten the cinch, nope, that didn't work. So after 2 years, boom, it goes to the right side where we have it today on the back of our Levi's. Yeah, so some of this is just trial and error. And we only learned some of these details much later, well, during the course of our preparing to celebrate for the 150th anniversary of the 501 jean. We did a lot of research to determine what the first model looked like, and these are some of the learnings that we came up with.
Oh, wow.
Next to it in the middle, top middle, you'll see a little pocket. It was created for a pocket watch, which was a common accessory in the 19th century. Even for, oh, yes, Kent State. There's several coming up there. It was created. One of the things I love about our earliest Levi's is you can still see on some of them the outline of the pocket watch where it was there. One thing that happened, though, just like the patch in the center that we moved over to the right, we would eventually move that watch pocket below the waistband, because we started to do something like piecework, and it was too hard to have to attach that to the waistband. I hope that makes sense. So does the chain rubbing remain on as well on some of those old jeans? Yeah, We not the rubbing so much, but there is a little piece of chain connected to the pocket watch that is on one of our 1933 pairs.
Oh,
That's a very
fantastic.
good question. It's one of my favorite. Well, I have lots of favorites, so I should stop saying that. But I love the detail of the little piece of chain that's hanging off. Yeah, it's fabulous.
It's
So
amazing.
on the right, the top right, you'll see what remains of the button fly. Pretty much none of the buttons because they've rusted off. And so what you'll see are the rust marks where the buttons used to be. And for these earliest pairs of Levi's, these would have been sew-on buttons. We would move to shank later on, but
Wow.
sew-on buttons for those
Wow.
early days. So probably maybe the first little few, maybe Jacob Davis himself was sewing those on. He would eventually, we would eventually hire, along with Jacob Davis coming to be the manager of our factory, sewing machine operators to do that work, and other seamstresses. Oh,
I
we
had a
have a
question.
question.
Yeah, when did it become?
When did the buttons become rivet buttons? Okay, two different things. Rivets are the little pieces of metal added, like at the top of the watch pocket.
Mhm.
Those are to secure and to make stronger the stress points. So you see on the pocket at the top and the bottom as you go down that smile, those are the rivets. Buttons are different. The buttons are buttons, and that would have been on the button fly. And then above the little watch pocket, you'll see a little extra button. Guess what that was for? You guys are so good. I'm just going to let you guess for a minute what the buttons on the
Suspenders.
waistband would have been for.
Suspenders.
Yes,
Braces.
braces or suspenders, Leon. That's what they were for there originally, but they rusted off. Bottom left picture, you can see the organza that's there, but look carefully because one of the things that we had in the first 2 years was a little bit of gusset in the crotch, which we no longer have today. It was another of the indicators that this was the first year or two of production. And you'll see a crotch rivet. It's turned green that's down at the base. So in addition to the pockets, there was a rivet at the base of the crotch. And then over on the right bottom, oh, that's also a picture of the button fly, and you can see the
Yeah.
rest there. Let's go to the next slide and talk about women's blue jeans. So 1873, we introduced blue jeans for blue collar workers. But those blue collar workers are men. You know, for the first 50, 60 years, it's men who are wearing them. It's very scandalous for women to be wearing pants. Certainly, well, not in the 19th century, but we at Levi Strauss and Company introduced the first women's blue jeans in 1934. We call them Lady Levi's. We want to we got Levi's, then we got the Lady Levi's, and we give them a lot number 701, as you can see in that little sketch there. This is the women's version of the 501. Okay, so you got the 701 and the 501. And by the way, if you women out there go out and buy a pair of Levi's today, and if they have a 700 in the number somewhere, that's a reference to this first women's garment that began with the 701, the very first one. The patch that you can see on the back there, that says Lady Levi's, you'll see that it has measurements for the women, hip and waist measurements. Let me tell you that women in that era didn't like that. They would often take that off. Didn't want to share that information. Length is okay. Hip and waist, no, we'll keep that to ourselves. Okay, we'll go to the next slide.
Of course, of course.
Here's one of the early women to wear the Lady Levi's. In fact, she probably wore men's Levi's first. Her name is Pearl Baker. She lived on a ranch in Robbers Roost, Utah. It was sagebrush country, which you can see just behind her. And she worked with rough stock, cattle, rode a horse, needed deep pockets, and she wanted Levi's because they were tough and they made sense. And there she is. And she illustrates who some of those first women were to wear Levi's. They were Western American, independent, free-thinking women who didn't mind if other women during the day during that era, were not wearing pants. And if you look at the next slide, I think there's one or two, with an article. So in 1990, years later, Pearl was interviewed for a paper in Arizona where she moved to. And in the next picture, the next slide, you can see her response in an interview. So next one will go forward. And she writes, I've circled it there. She writes, I wore Levi's, which women never did. The idea that I went to a dance in my boots and overalls was scandalous. I had to live this long to see Levi's adopted. So that'll give you an idea of, those first women to wear those Levi's. They were boundary pushers, rebels. Kind of sounds like Levi's, right?
That's
Yep.
fantastic.
So let's go to the next picture, unless, Leon, you have another question.
No, keep going.
Okay, you're good to go. You may or may not recognize a very dashing looking Marlene Dietrich here. And she is arriving at the Paris train station dressed in pants. Woo, she was causing quite a commotion in 1933. This is to kind of give you an idea of what's happening in that era. So that's 1933. A year later, we will introduce Lady Levi's, those first blue jeans. And if you go to the next slide, you can see our oldest pair of women's. They date to the early 30s. Wow. And here they are. They came from Central California. And the woman who wore them is pictured there on the left. This is one of my earliest acquisitions when I started at Levi's. The woman who wore them was a college student named Viola. And that's her high school graduation picture. Yep, we look a little different now when we graduate, but she was very mature and also a career-minded woman who went to college, and she wanted to become an English teacher. And her classes were held in the Sierra Nevada mountains because it's super hot in Central California in the summer, and it made sense to wear Levi's like this. Next picture, which is should be a detail shot, some detail shots of this pair of our oldest women's pair that we call Viola because they're named for Viola.
Excellent.
Look, she signed her name on the inside pocket bag. Viola Longacre. You can see the cinch that's at the back, just like on the men's, rivets, and some pocket.
I see.
I see the belt remains, and the watch pocket is lower. Yep, that's right. Those things, and we've added belt loops. We did that on the 20s. They hadn't been there before, but all those little differences help us to date a pair of Levi's. So say hello to Viola, our oldest women's pair of Levi's.
Hey, Viola.
And I think the next picture is just a blow up of Viola's name. Just a nod. Yes, I like to thank Viola for wearing those. So that interesting background about Viola. She lived to be 101. She did graduate in English, became an English teacher, and these were in her closet when she passed away at 101. And we eventually acquired those. She kept them. Yeah, you have a question.
How did you find them?
So we find things a lot of different ways. In this case, I got a tip off from a collector, and she was the one that went to the estate sale and bought them.
Fantastic.
From Viola's closet. And then she got in touch with me.
Right.
I will tell you that it took a long time before we acquired these because there was a lot of back and forth, but we eventually did. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. I think I am going to transition to a few of my favorites. So we've talked about men's, we've talked about women's. We've got some amazing pieces in the collection. This is one of them. So one of the things that's great about the archives is not just the garments, which are the primary part of the collection, but also letters and other ephemera that goes with the collection. And in this case, a letter that went with this pair of Levi's that were sent to us in the 1930s. Look at that writing, by the way. We have lost the beautiful script from the 30s. So the person that sent these to us was a man who was sending us a thank you letter. He was driving his vehicle and his car died. And all he had in the back of his trunk was a pair of Levi's and some rope. Guess what he did? Yes, believe it or not, he tied the rope to the Levi's, and with the help of a friendly person who stopped, he used these Levi's to tow the car back to his home. And he was so amazed by how strong they were that he sent us a thank you note and the pair as living proof that Levi's are so strong that they can tow a car. So, the back of the Levi's, there's our two horses with a little emblem of our overalls in the middle. The horses are going the opposite direction. That was our trademark we created just before the patent expired to demonstrate the quality and toughness of the Levi's. And I have people who say, have you tested that? Well, sometimes, yes, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But look, we were able to tow a car and it was all about the symbolism. Okay, Leon, not just any car. Those were heavy. They definitely were heavy. And we were so amazed by this story, we actually recreated it in a commercial, although with very handsome actors in like the end of the 80s or the early 90s. It was called Pickup. And the tow truck driver comes and conveniently removes his own Levi's. He still has his boxers on and uses them to hitch to the broken down car and then drive it away with the girl that's in the other car.
I think
yes, it was a very popular commercial. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw it.
I have to look it up now.
All right, Leon, that's one of my favorites. There's another that I think is in the next piece. Here it is, and it comes with a letter. Aren't these great? The letter and the Levi's. So this is a pair of Levi's that date to 1917. 501s. They were owned and purchased by a hard rock miner in Arizona. Yeah, talk about distressing. And he worked so hard on them that he had to patch them up because, as he wrote in a letter, he wore them every day for 3 years, except Sunday. Think about what he might be wearing on Sunday. Yeah, he's probably going to church, so he put on maybe his best Levi's or, his church clothes. But after those 3 years, he sends them in with this letter and says, hey, you've got a guarantee, and we did at the time, that if your Levi's rip, I will get a new pair. I'm showing you that I've had these, they've ripped. Can you send me a new pair?
Like,
really, after 3 years and all that hard work. But yes, we live up to our guarantees. But we've had this at our headquarters, this pair since 1920, when he sent them in 3 years after buying them in 1917. These have been on the road. They were in Frontierland at Disneyland when it opened.
Oh, wow.
This is like the traveling pants. I've taken them with me to Germany. They were in the National Museum there. And now they're just back home in our fireproof safe, but they're a fabulous pair. I shall stop and see if you have any questions.
Those are fantastic.
Yes. Tell me about the patch on the rear.
Yes.
Shall I answer that first?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Okay, so I will do that before we watch this little video. The patch on the rear, it was also a patch to cover the holes that were in the back of the Levi's. Yeah, he covered everything. And by the way, we did a reproduction of them. We've done several reproductions of that, Jean. One photo of one of the reproductions appeared on a New York magazine front cover when we celebrated our 150th anniversary. Anyway, fabulous pair.
Wow.
Okay, so we're going to play this video, but let me give you a little background into this. A few years after joining the company, I got a tip. I told you that I sometimes get tips for things to acquire. Well, this was a really odd one about coming from a man who said he had a very unusual pair of Levi's with an amazing story. Did I want to buy them for the archives? Well, long story short, I said yes, but only after thoroughly investigating these. Check out this video and hopefully you can hear it.
The art on these Levi's tells the story of one man's life in prison. These pants started as a pair of white stay-pressed Levi's from the 1970s. Every inch of these pants has been covered with this amazing art drawn with a pen. We know the artist was incarcerated from 1979 to 2013. We can only guess at the meaning of these drawings, but what's clear is the amount of time and artistic talent invested. The artist never wore these. They were simply the only canvas available. Imagine doing all this while doing time.
Chat question.
Okay, what are the pants made of? Well, I couldn't hear it, but I saw it and I know that. The pants are made of a twill. We call them white stay-pressed Levi's, which meant that they had kind of a polyester finish on them, which allowed them to have a crease Then you could throw them in the wash and in the washing machine and dryer, and the crease would remain. By the way, fun fact, a perma crease, yes, that's about the size of it. It was this permanent crease. So the same pant, that same stay press white pant, was used by the costume house and the costume makers for Star Wars. So when you see Luke Skywalker dressed in his white pants, yep, they are a pair of stay pressed white Levi's. Sadly, we didn't get them at auction, but if you find them and they're out of there again, hey, let me know. I want to get them. So those prison pants are amazing. When I first got the photos of them and the story, I was like, really, but after some due diligence on my side and then receiving them, they are just amazing.
These are incredible.
Okay,
really cool.
I'm reading a few of these questions, but Leon, should I go? I'm not sure where I'm at in my. Yeah, I can keep going. So let me see what's next.
Keep going.
As we near the end, this might be okay. So here's another one. Right, I forgot about this. So we're acquiring things all the time. This is one of our most recent additions. I made the successful bid on this on December 26th last year. So while everybody in my family was playing board games, I was on the online auction with Goodwill, where I had a tip that this was going to go on auction. So check out this World War II Levi's jacket. I'm going to let you just take a look at this for just a minute. You'll notice that the jacket has pleats. These were gussets. You could remove the stitching if you wanted to have more room in them. There's no pocket flap on the jacket because during the war, we were saving material. That's one of the indicators to me when I look at this immediately, that this was from World War II. I'm going to talk about some of the details a little bit more in the next slide. Oh, is there a question?
Okay, cool.
The pocket is lower and the armhole looks really big. Yeah, I think it's just the picture wasn't like a great picture. That's the Goodwill picture. We're going to take a better picture at the end of the year. We do an annual photo shoot once a year and we upload those photos into our virtual tool. We have a virtual tool so our employees can see pieces that are in the archive. So that's a funny picture. Yes, the patch is interesting. I'm going to tell you about the two patches, but let's go to the detail shot on the next slide.
Cool.
Okay. Cool. First of all, check out the image on the left of the button. This is a generic non-branded button with a laurel leaf. Another indication that this is World War II because we didn't have many, we couldn't have branded buttons. We used what was around, and the generic laurel leaf button was around during World War II era, so we would use it. I've got a little arrow at the bottom pointing to the rivet that's on the opening to the sleeve. So our early riveted denim jackets were riveted at the opening to the sleeves, and the pockets were also riveted. Check out the top right picture of the selvage on the inside of the jacket lining. If you are a denim head, you're gonna look for that selvage. And the back of the jacket has a cinch, just like our jeans. There is a way to tighten the jacket if you want. But here's the amazing bit of this jacket. The fact that it survived World War II is one amazing part of it, but the other is the additions that were added by the owner. And that first is that very unusual round patch that's just beneath the collar. That is, that's not a fake. That is the patch for the 13th Air Ferrying Squadron. During World War II, those were the pilots who flew planes that had been manufactured in the States over to Europe. The 13th Squadron sent them over to Europe, places like Scotland. And that is the emblem. So if you would be in the know, you would know what that is if you were one of those pilots. Now in the next picture, here's the rest of the clue for the mystery of this jacket. That yes, the inside patch. So this is our leather patch. We've got Levi Strauss and Company, and you can't really see anymore the little horse with the overalls in the middle, which is our 2-horse trademark. But you can read, hopefully, the woman's name who added it onto the jacket. It is Betty Jean Moore. Betty Jean Moore. If you happen to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, you might recognize what I'm about to tell you. Underneath it says Fairfield Sassoon Army Air Base. Today we call it Travis Airfield. And Betty likely worked at Travis Air Base, and she may have been one of the few pilots who were female who did some of that ferrying work during World War II. We love this jacket. We got it from Goodwill. They're getting expensive at Goodwill now when they auction these things off, but we're super happy to have this and this story from this jacket. Now, shall I stop and you have a question?
Yeah, a question.
Were the pleats akin to work pleats often found in the back of a men's coat? They were, in the sense, if this is true, that they gave you more room. They were to expand it and give you some more room. Right. Yes, those pleats were. When we got to the 60s and we went to our modern style, which is now copied by lots of denim houses, we lost those pleats altogether.
Yeah. What else do you know about Betty?
Not much, just that. So I reached out to Goodwill to ask them what they could tell me. And they said, no, that was just in one of our bins. It came from Northern California. We don't know anything more about it than I can tell you. And then I did a little research on my own about the patch, got in touch with some of the historians at Air who know air history during World War II. But it's an amazing piece, and we love the story.
Cool.
All right. Yes, I think I'm down to my last one or two slides, and the next one might be a picture. Oh, yeah. Okay. So in the same way that Betty used her Levi's to indicate something that was important to her, that patch and her name, Levi's have been used as a canvas for self-expression for decades. That began with adding patches just for practical reasons. By the 60s, as is the case of this vest, Levi's were used as a canvas for your political activism. In the case of this young Mexican-American woman from Los Angeles, she embroidered her fist and the Chicano power words, also her religion, right? She wanted her pink cross on the top. And an example of not only Levi's being used as a canvas for expression, but also the way blue jeans, denim, and Levi's became the choice of so many young people in the growing youth culture from the late 60s on. Yep.
Excellent.
Okay. We got like 2 more slides, and then I shall stop and answer questions. Hey, if you come into San Francisco, check out our headquarters. This is Levi's Plaza, as we call it. It's at the base of Telegraph Hill. If you come to San Francisco, Coit Tower is on the top of Telegraph Hill. Sometimes at lunchtime, maybe you did this, Marina, I walk the stairs, I get a little exercise, and go up to the top of Telegraph Hill, where I can see the Golden Gate Bridge on one side and the Bay Bridge on the other. It's an amazing view. This is where we're located. You can come by cruise ship, or you can fly into the San Francisco airport and then, take a car or the BART, our public transportation up there. If you will just advance, you're going to see that we reopened our long closed museum in the next slide, called the Vault, in our headquarters. Yeah, it's called the Vault. That's the name of it. But the next slide, you're going to see somebody noted in one of their notes that they saw this was our first reopening exhibition. We called it Amped, and it was all about music icons in denim. And there were some great pieces. The one in the center, surrounded by the microphones, is Kurt Cobain's iconic Levi's, patched up and grungy. They're amazing. By the way, they went on auction in 2023. Sadly, I didn't get them because they were purchased for almost, $412,000. $412,000. Can you believe it? And we couldn't afford that. So I got in touch with the auction house and worked out I got in touch with the owner who lives in Manhattan, and he offered to loan it to us. So this, and I'll wrap this up. This was on display along with a Swarovski studded suit that Beyonce wore in one of our ads. There's a Freddie Mercury 501 in the back with a little red t-shirt. and his jacket that he wore at rehearsals. There's Brittany and Justin. You probably recognize those pieces over there. It was a fabulous opening exhibition. If you got to see it, I hope you enjoyed it because it was pretty amazing. Okay, that's it for me until you have questions, Leon.
Okay, one question in the chat.
Okay, I can see some people. Yeah, I'm glad we got to see some of them. Did you see the article in the New York Times about Adriano Goldschmidt? I did. His obituary. So for those of you who may or may not know, Adriano Goldschmidt was known as the godfather of denim, and his story about his introduction to his love affair with denim is a Levi story. So he was in occupied Italy during World War II, and he saw American GIs come in to liberate them, and guess what they were wearing? Levi's. And that began his love affair. And of course, as he mentioned, and it was mentioned in the obituary, it was all that he wore, those Levi's. Yeah, thanks for calling that out.
Yeah, it was a really great article in the very recent New York Times for the people in the audience on the 19th, and the obit is great, but it ends with this great line that says, I have it right.
Oh, here's some questions.
That he says, Yet he never wore his own creations. A classicist at heart, Mr. Goldschmidt favored vintage 501 button fly Levi's. So fantastic.
The first question that I see up there has to do with the crotch rivet. A question about cowboys crouching around a fire. Guess what? That's a true story. It happened to one of our presidents who was an outdoors and an avid camper. And yeah, that was uncomfortable. So by World War II, that had to go. Why were these kept collected by the company after they were made, or were these found later and acquired? Okay, does the company have records about the number of pairs of Lady Levi's they sold in 1934? No, I wish we did. That would be super handy. We had some things that, well, first I will tell you that we lost a lot of things in the San Francisco earthquake and fire, our really early stuff, but no, they didn't. If they had those records, they didn't keep them, and we don't have them. Have the early Levi's been compared to men's denim work pants that were made in Europe during the 19th century? There's certainly been lots of comparisons. We don't claim that we made denim. Denim was a long time workwear fabric. Names like denim and jean are historical fabrics. But the fabric that we use for our Levi's was sourced from back east, originally at the Amoskeag factory in Manchester, New Hampshire, the site, one of the early sites of the American Industrial Revolution. Let's see. Thank you, Trey. Oh,
the one question I reposted in the chat from me is about the oldest pair of jeans.
So you're asking, where do those earliest pair of jeans come from?
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. So the answer is I don't know. So when I joined became a historian in 2014, they were part of the collection, and my predecessor, Lynn Downey, I don't know if she found them or not, but they likely came from somewhere in California or Nevada. That's where we were mainly selling. Clearly they've been outdoors, so they probably belong to a miner. That would be my best guess. And yes, we will have another exhibit in the vault. We're doing them every 6 months. If you come, we've got right now a sports exhibit all about Levi's in the world of sports, because we're celebrating the fact that Levi Stadium is hosting so many important games like the Super Bowl and the World Cup games that are going to happen there soon. The next exhibition that'll open in July is all about, and it's called an American Original, Innovation to Icon. It's, set to the backdrop of the 250th, but it's a Levi's take on that.
So thank you, Tracy. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It has been a new adventure in D&D tonight, but I want to thank everyone, and please thank Tracy for her time. Please follow the Costume Society of America on Facebook and Instagram to make sure you hear about all of the upcoming episodes of Conversations on Dress. And if you enjoy this content and the conversation, stay in the loop. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video so you don't miss future programs exploring the rich world of dress and culture. And if you'd like to support this work more directly, become a member of Costume Society to gain access to exclusive resources and help support the field you love. Or finally, give a large, massive donation. We accept checks to keep the content free for all. We accept anything. So thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you soon. So thank you all and have a good night.